Now, USAID is an agency that was originally brought into being by foreign aid initiatives of Congress and then put into power by an executive order by JFK all the way back during the middle of the Cold War. And USAID, which is designed originally, the U.S. Agency for International Development, which was designed essentially as a way of spreading America's foreign policy tentacles all over the world. I mean, that was the explicit purpose. It wasn't just to do nice things. It was to do nice things and also to support institutions in various countries that were going to be a bulwark against communism. That's what USAID was for. And since the end of the Cold War, USAID has been transformed into trans pride flags in Africa. USAID has been turned into boondoggle projects that are designed to pay millions or billions of dollars to left-wing NGOs, both in the United States and outside the United States, and keep up an entire employment line for people who are out of power. So when Republicans are in power, USAID is still paying a bunch of blue organizations to keep the trains running on time and to make sure that the money continues to flow to various organizations abroad that are willing to spread social leftism, not just anti-Chinese or anti-Russian or anti-America's enemies moves, as you might expect if you were pursuing actual hard-nosed American foreign policy. Again, soft power can be a very good thing. The idea of USAID is not wrong. The idea that you want to find non-governmental organizations in, for example, countries that are teetering between China and the United States and support those non-governmental organizations to make that country more pro-America, that's not a bad idea. The problem is that the USAID infrastructure has been hijacked by the radical left. This is a point that President Trump made yesterday, slamming USAID and saying, listen, it didn't have to become a cutout for left-wing ideology, but it did, and that's not my fault, that's your fault.
The first term, though, USAID was something that you liked in some respects.
I love the concept of it.
Had some programs.
Sure. I love the concept, but they turn out to be radical left lunatics. And the concept of it is good, but it's all about the people.
So he is right about that. Again, the fact is that what the left has done with so many institutions, and USAID is just one of them, is taken the original purpose of the institution and then gutted it and worn the face around like Hannibal Lecter. That is exactly what they have done with the university systems in the United States. They did it with the objective press in the United States, and they did it with USAID. USAID has been participating in so much waste and fraud over the course of time. As Daniel Greenfield of the David Horowitz Freedom Center points out, USAID has sent $9.3 billion to Islamic terror states collectively responsible for killing over 3,000 American soldiers. There's an enormous number of terrible organizations supported by USAID. That was a point that was being made by Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary. Here she was yesterday talking about examples of waste and abuse inside USAID.
Here's the reason why Elon Musk and others have been taking a look, because if you look at the waste and abuse that has run through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do, to get the fraud, waste, and abuse out of our federal government.
Of course, she is totally right about all of that. Now, I will say that there is a wing of the Republican Party that wishes to use the fact that these institutions have been so thoroughly corrupted to basically go totally isolationist, which again, as I said yesterday, is a mistake. Two things can be true at once. USAID has become a totally corrupted institution. Also, that doesn't mean that the best strategy for the United States is to retreat from the world entirely and simply grant that vacuum to, for example, the Chinese or the Russians or the Iranians. With that said, Elon Musk, who had basically been put in temporary charge of the USAID, he said yesterday that there basically is nothing left at USAID that's worth saving.
As we dug into USAID, it became apparent that what we have here is not an apple with a worm in it, but we have actually just a bowl of worms. Mm-hmm. There is no apple. You've just got to basically get rid of the whole thing. It's beyond repair. So really, none of this could be done without the full support of the president. I went over it with him, in detail, and he agreed with that we should shut it down. I actually checked with him a few times to are you sure? I'm like, yes. And so we're shutting it down.
So the budget of USAID is somewhere between $40 and $50 billion. It is a very, very large governmental program. So when people say things like, well, it's only 1% of the American budget, that's true, but that's just because our budget is way, way, way too large. That doesn't mean we should be wasting tons of money on interests that are antithetical to American interests abroad. Again, the spreading of social leftism in Zimbabwe should not be the goal of American foreign policy. Flying Pride Progress flags outside the Vatican should not be a goal of American foreign policy, and neither should supporting left-wing NGOs that are also supported by people like George Soros abroad. That is a bad use of taxpayer dollars. Whether or not it is a waste of taxpayer dollars is actually secondary to the fact that it's counterproductive for American interests abroad. We should not be wasting tons of money. So what exactly happened here? Well, the president deployed Elon Musk and DOGE, the Department of Governmental Efficiency, to go into the headquarters over at USAID and begin digging through the personnel files and trying to figure out who was a waste of money, where was all the money going. And the acting heads of USAID tried to resist, so President Trump fired them. Now, a bunch of people on the left very, very upset about all of this. They're upset for a couple of reasons. One, they're upset because they actually like the Pride Progress flag being flown in far-flung African nations with American taxpayer dollars. They want America funding abortion abroad, right? It's this sort of stuff that they are interested in. So number one, on an ideological level, they support precisely the things the American taxpayers don't want to do. But there's something else going on too, and that is USAID, like so many other federal government programs, is an absolute gravy train for Democratic allies. That's what it is. It is a bunch of money that is being spent on various constituencies that Democrats cultivate and then use as the incoming State Department officials, for example, if Democrats win office. It is not a coincidence that so many Democrats, both elected and unelected, worked at places like USAID or places funded by USAID. This giant grab bag of cash, which has essentially become a handout mechanism for the left wing. Of course they're angry that it is going away or at least being radically minimized. So what happened? Apparently, on Sunday, 2 senior USAID officials were suspended for blocking DOGE officials from a restricted area as after the agency's website went offline. And Elon Musk posted to X that USAID was beyond repair and needed to be shut down. This is according to the UK Guardian, which, of course, is a very left-wing source from Great Britain. Well, now Marco Rubio has said that he is now the acting head of USAID, which, of course, makes sense. One of the kind of points that the Democrats were making is Elon Musk has never been appointed to a government position. He's sort of operating as an outside government advisor. He doesn't take a salary from the government. He doesn't work for the government. We don't know if he has a security clearance. So instead, Secretary of State Rubio, who was overwhelmingly confirmed by the Senate and, of course, has passed every security clearance and used to sit in the Senate, he says, listen, I'm the acting head of USAID now. And we're going to go through and we're going to make sure that all of the priorities of this administration are aligned with the spending at USAID.
I'm the acting director of USAID. I've delegated that authority to someone, but I stay in touch with him. And again, our goal was to go in and align our foreign aid to the national interest. But if you go to mission after mission and embassy after embassy around the world, you will often find that in many cases, USAID is involved in programs that run counter to what we're trying to do in our national strategy with that country or with that region. That cannot continue. USAID is not an independent, non-governmental entity. It is an entity that spends taxpayer dollars, and it needs to spend it, as the statute says, in alignment with the policy directives that they get from the Secretary of State, the National Security Council, and the President.
Okay, this is all perfectly obvious. And basically what President Trump did is he used DOGE as the crowbar to pry open USAID, and then once all of the rot was spilling out into the hallway, then he said to Rubio, okay, you go in and you take all the rot and you clean it out. So what Democrats are claiming is that USAID is going to be completely shut down. Of course, Musk had said that. You don't have to shut down the agency in violation of statute in order to achieve the same purpose. You can simply clean it out, and that would be the best thing to do. Again, the strategy seems to be, from the administration, move fast and break things. Basically, all of these cuts, all of these attempts to bring a chainsaw to the party, that's exactly how Musk ran, for example, X. Right? When Musk took over X, he fired pretty much everybody in the building. He called in everybody, he fired them, and that broke a bunch of the systems. And then he rebuilt and fixed the systems. And that's precisely what he's doing. He's actually running places like USAID the same way that he actually ran X. So, for example, he brought in with him, when DOGE went into USAID, he brought in with him, according to Wired, 6 young men between the ages of 19 and 24 who, quote, have little to no government experience and are now playing critical roles in DOGE, tasked by executive order with modernizing federal technology and software to maximize governmental efficiency and progress. The engineers all hold nebulous job titles within DOGE, and at least one appears to be working as a volunteer. Now, this, of course, is an issue of supposed consternation to the left. Oh my God, all these young people, young, brilliant people who are highly technologically qualified, making cuts and checking the work. No, now, of course, if these people were on the left, it would be an unmitigated good. It would be the next generation taking over, getting involved in public service. But when it's people who are on the right, then of course, they're evil nerds in the back closet, probably incels or something. Even though what you're really seeing is a bunch of very effective young people who are doing a bunch of scut work that other people aren't willing to do. The 6 men, according to Wired, are one part of the broader project of Musk allies assuming key government positions. Already, Musk's lackeys, including senior staff from XAI, Tesla, and the Boring Company, have taken control of the Office of Personnel Management and General Services Administration and have gained access to the Treasury Department's payment system. So, what exactly is the problem? There seems to be a kind of missing link here in democratic logic. And the missing link is this. All of these people, all of them work for the President of the United States. Trump can fire Elon Musk at any time. He can fire any of the people who are working for Elon Musk at any time. He can simply stop granting them access to any of the government buildings. He's the President of the United States. President Trump can appoint Secretary Rubio, the head of USAID. These are executive branch agencies. The way an executive branch agency works is everyone serves at the pleasure of the President of the United States. That doesn't mean the president can violate statute, but he's not violating statute when he puts his own people in place at these agencies to ensure that his priorities are enacted via the statute. Now, if you don't like that, there's a way that this could have been avoided, and that would have been not to create a massive administrative bureaucracy since the beginning of the 20th century. The Democrats, in other words, centralized extraordinary power over the course of a century and a half in the executive branch, and now they're just mad that the person in charge of the executive branch is using that power to carve away all of their permanent substructures. What we are watching is a sea change in the way that government is done, not because Donald Trump is quote-unquote dictatorial or authoritarian, but because he is using precisely the same power every Democrat has used in order to carve away the permanent root of the Democratic Party. Again, all these programs at USAID, not all, most of these programs at USAID are boondoggles that are designed to help out Democratic allies and promote Democrat blue priorities, even when they're not in the government. You want to look at something that is the definition of the deep state, a continuing, never-changing bureaucracy that consistently floods taxpayer money to a bunch of allies of the Democratic Party. And Trump is saying, no, we are not going to do that. Here's President Trump backing Elon Musk's program here and saying, listen, he's good at cutting things. That's why he's there.
He's a very talented guy from the standpoint of management and costs. Elon can't do and won't do anything without our approval, and we'll give him the approval where appropriate. Where not appropriate, we won't. But he reports in, and it's something that he feels very strongly about, and I'm impressed because he's running, obviously, a big company. It has nothing to do, if there's a conflict, that we won't let him get near it. But he does have a good natural instinct. He's got a team of very talented people. We're trying to shrink government, and he can probably shrink it as well as anybody else, if not better.
Yeah, again, notice some of the things that Trump is saying there. He's saying, listen, if Musk proposes a cut, and we don't want to do it, we just won't do it. If we think that Musk is conflicted out on a particular issue, he won't be involved. Right? He's saying Musk works for me. I'm the president. Musk is not the president, and he works for me. And he's doing good work, and he's cutting. And if that means some things get broken that we then have to patch back up, then that's what it will be. Marco Rubio put out a note to senior Republican and Democratic lawmakers saying, quote, the Department of State and other pertinent entities will be consulting with Congress and the appropriate committees to reorganize and absorb certain bureaus, offices, and missions of the USAID. The White House put out a statement saying, quote, under President Trump, the waste, fraud, and abuse ends right now. Now, again, Rubio has put in charge a person named Peter Morocco, who's the head of the State Department's Foreign Assistance Office, and also an unnamed person expected to be the USAID's deputy administrator to review agency activities and operations. The review could eliminate certain aid programs or lead to the closure of certain missions around the world. But many of these programs will indeed remain. In fact, some of the humanitarian programs are already being preserved by the Trump administration. So this idea that all of this is simply going away is not true. Many of the programs are going to remain if they are useful to the United States. But there are many things that are not useful to the United States, and there is no reason we should be funding them. So the turmoil, in other words, you cannot shrink an agency that is a permanent part of the political substructure without turmoil. That's just the way this is going to work. Now, Democrats are freaking out about all of this. Atul Gawande, who, of course, is an American surgeon, writer, is sort of a famous Harvard professor, and who has worked pretty closely with USAID. He put out a statement via Jen Griffin over at Fox News saying, quote, "This is a gift to our enemies and competitors. This pause is not a pause. It's a destruction of the agency. 2 weeks ago, I was combating diseases. We had 21 serious outbreaks at the time worldwide. 3 are serious now. An Ebola outbreak in the capital of Uganda. Bird flu has broken out in 49 countries. Our efforts to contain them have all been shut down. We were on the verge of ending HIV, TB, and malaria. That has all ended with this pause. It is a gift to our enemies and competitors. We're funding demining operations in Vietnam to allow farmers to get back to their fields so people can farm." Now, here's the thing. Do you think that all of these things are going to go away? Do you think Marco Rubio wants headlines, or Trump wants headlines about how AIDS spikes in Africa because USAID funding has ended? I have a feeling that Trump doesn't actually want those headlines. So what is this going to be in the end? It's going to be the same as all the other Trump programs. It's going to be designed to achieve victories and to minimize defeats and costs. He is utilitarian. Everyone seems to be making the mistake at every aspect of this administration that Donald Trump is some sort of ideologue, that he's going to do tariffs, not because he actually wants to pry concessions out of America's opponents or out of America's erstwhile allies, but that he's doing tariffs because he's ideologically wedded to tariffs and he will ride that bomb all the way down into the ground like Rip Torn in Dr. Strangelove. Well, that's not the way he works. And the same thing is true of USAID, and the same thing is true of everything else. President Trump is seeking victories, and he's seeking to minimize defeats. President Trump's winning continues, but in order for the caterwauling from the left is not about the loss of HIV programs in Africa. That is not what this is about. It is about the fact that the plaything of the permanent Democratic Party, the administrative bureaucracy they built and have lavished with trillions of dollars over the course of decades, is now being redone by the Trump administration, and they are freaking out about it. And I gotta tell you, when some of the worst people freak out about a thing, I tend to like the thing. So, for example, Representative Ilhan Omar, she was out there yesterday complaining about the cuts to USAID. And all I can say is if Ilhan Omar is against it, I'm for it.
A billionaire that hasn't been vetted, has not gone through confirmation, has not been elected by the American people, who we still do not understand what in the world he's doing, should not be telling American employees that they cannot access the building they work at. What kind of country is this man turning our country into? What kind of country are we becoming? It is embarrassing to read the headlines about free America, where one man is walking around like he is the boss of all of us, and we don't know who put him in charge.
Well, you know who put Donald Trump in charge of the executive branch of the government? We had an election, and Trump won. And now a bunch of people who work for Trump are doing the things that Trump wants them to do inside the executive branch of government. You know who USAID does not actually work for? Is Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar is part of the legislative branch. That legislative branch approves budgets. And then when it comes to the actual spending on these particular projects, that happens in the executive branch, where the president and secretary of state have enormous authority because Marco Rubio was confirmed and Donald Trump was elected. Ripping on Elon for being Trump's hatchet man is just a way of avoiding the reality, which is you lost the election. You lost. And the reason you're really angry is not, of course, because Donald Trump is making cuts to USAID. What you're really angry about is that the thing you guys have counted on forever, an endless funnel, fire hose, gushing, dam-breaking river of money is now being stopped from going to your friends while you're out of power. That's why you're really, really angry. Democratic Representative Johnny Olszewski of Maryland, he's trying to make the claim. It's hilarious. They know that most Americans don't actually want to spend the money that USAID is talking about spending, and they don't like these projects. So what is he saying? He's saying, well, actually, if they come after USAID, what will they come after next? They're going to come after your freedom. I'm going to need a logic here that connects cuts to USAID to, quote unquote, your freedoms.
We will do all that we can in Congress, but we need you, America, to listen and to act, because today it's USAID. Tomorrow it's our health care, it's Social Security, it's our livelihoods, it's our freedoms. So stand up for USA Today, so that we can stand up for all of our freedoms in the days ahead.
Okay, first of all, I do love the fact that Democrats label Social Security a freedom when it is actually an entitlement. Second of all, Donald Trump is not touching entitlements. He has said this over and over and over again. In fact, he's trying to save money abroad so he can spend the money at home. Chuck Schumer had, I think, the funniest take. He's like, oh no, what if they shut down the IRS? I don't know. What if they shut down the IRS, Chuck? I mean, obviously, the American people do love the IRS. If there's one agency of the American government that the people just adore, it is the Internal Revenue Service that audits their restaurant receipts.
We also know this is just the beginning. If DOGE attacks USAID today, then you can be sure they'll move on to another target tomorrow. Who knows? Maybe it'll be the Postal Service or the IRS or even the Social Security Administration. They could be next. Or maybe our national security agencies.
Not ours, not the IRS. No, that would be terrible. Meanwhile, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, I do love when Democrats scream and cry about constitutional crises after they literally located all power in the executive branch and cheered as Joe Biden violated the Constitution repeatedly. Now they're very upset about the Constitution.
So we will use every power that we have in our disposal in the United States Senate. My colleagues will do the same thing in the House. This is a constitutional crisis that we are in today. Let's call it what it is. The people get to decide how we defend the United States of America. The people get to decide how their taxpayer money is spent. Elon Musk does not get to decide.
Again, Elon Musk works for, wait for it, the president of the United States who was elected. He was elected, and he actually has pretty significant plenary power over the defense of the United States. That is one of the things that is most located inside the executive branch. Chris Murphy. Meanwhile, Senator Andy Kim of New Jersey doing the same routine. So outraged. Saying, I wanted to get in the USAID building, and I couldn't. They wouldn't let me in. Well, I have a question. Do you work for the executive branch? Because I noticed that you are a senator.
I certainly hope Congress takes action because what is happening here is illegal. It is unacceptable to have a president try through executive power be able to reorganize or remove USAID. The fact that these employees are being demonized, the fact that they're being called, it's a criminal organization from Elon Musk, the fact that they're being told not to show up, that the federal aid is being frozen. I mean, it's just such disrespect. They deserve better. They are public servants. They swear an oath to serve this country. And right now they are being treated as if they're the criminals.
Well, I mean, they actually work inside the executive branch. If your boss doesn't want you there, you don't work there anymore. The real reason for this, the gravy train has stopped flowing. Now, meanwhile, hilariously, the federal government, as we know, put out a notice, an email to federal employees, millions of federal employees, saying to them, listen, if you want to come into work, you want to work for the president's agenda, you want to be a member of the executive branch, great. We'd love to have you. If not, here's a buyout offer that pays you until September. Apparently, according to Axios, about 20,000 federal workers have taken the buyout offer. That is about 1% of the federal workforce. The White House is targeting 5 to 10%. The offer is open through Thursday. So it could rise, despite the unions attempting to sort of cudgel everybody to stay. The official, according to Axios, says, quote, we expect more to come. If you see what's happening at USAID, it's just one piece of the puzzle. In other words, many of these people are going to lose their jobs anyway, so either take the buyout or you may find yourself on the breadline regardless. The buyout offer entitles federal employees to stop working immediately and continue to be paid through September 30th. The federal workforce's normal attrition rate is about 6% a year, so perhaps some of those people were meaning to leave anyway. But again, people are quitting because they are seeing that the cuts are coming with the chainsaw. Speaking of which, according to Politico, President Trump is about to finalize an executive order to shutter the Department of Education, which has been a long-time Republican goal. Again, one of the things about Trump that is truly an amazing, amazing thing. There's so many promises that various politicians have made for decades. Ronald Reagan pledged to shut down the Department of Education